Fear has always been the most powerful illusion, and comfort has always been its accomplice. Together, they build the walls that most people never climb, the invisible cages that convince men and women to settle for less than they are capable of becoming. Fear tells you to stay where it is safe. Comfort whispers that what you have is good enough, and slowly those voices wrap around your potential like chains. But here's the truth. Nothing extraordinary has ever been achieved by staying inside those chains. If you want to rise, if you want to lead, if you want to build something that outlives you, you must treat fear and comfort not as warnings to obey, but as signals to push harder. That is what I had to learn. When SpaceX lost 3 rockets in a row, when Tesla was being laughed at by the entire auto industry, fear was everywhere. Investors were afraid, employees were afraid, I was afraid. But fear does not mean stop. Fear means you are at the edge of growth. Fear is just data telling you that you are in new territory, and that is exactly where you need to be. Comfort zones are deceptive. They feel like safety, but in reality, they are prisons. They disguise stagnation as peace, mediocrity as stability, delay as patience. Comfort is where potential goes to die slowly, without noise. You think you are alive, but you are just repeating yesterday in an endless loop. That is why the most dangerous place to live is not in failure but in comfort. Failure at least teaches you. Comfort teaches you nothing. When I look back at every major step in my journey, none of it came when I was comfortable. Comfort never pushed me to build rockets. Comfort never pushed me to risk everything on electric cars. Comfort never kept me awake at night designing systems that people said were impossible. Discomfort did. The tension between fear and purpose is where true growth happens. If you wait for fear to disappear, you will never move. If you wait until you feel ready, you will wait forever. Readiness is a myth. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is action in the presence of fear. Fear is inevitable, but obedience to fear is optional. Most people think of fear as an enemy to avoid. I think of fear as a compass. Wherever fear is pointing, that is where growth is waiting. If you are afraid to start the company, that is the direction you must go. If you are afraid to leave the job, that is the decision you must make. If you are afraid of what others will say, that is exactly why you need to act. The presence of fear is not proof you should stop. It is proof you are exactly where you need to be. Fear is a signpost, not a stop sign. And the faster you learn that, the faster you will move beyond the gravity of average. Fear is also deceptive because it often disguises itself as logic. People will say, "It's not fear, I'm just being realistic." But realism is often just fear wearing a mask. When people told me reusable rockets were unrealistic, what they really meant was they were afraid to imagine a future outside the known. When they said electric cars could never work, it was fear of disruption, fear of change, fear of losing control. Logic is important, but when logic is used as a shield to protect comfort, it becomes a lie. True logic analyzes the risks and still calculates that progress demands we move forward. Fear dressed as logic convinces you to stay small, to wait, to accept less. You must learn to detect the disguise. Ask yourself, is this really logical, or is it fear pretending to be wisdom? Comfort uses similar disguises. Comfort says you are being patient when in truth you are procrastinating. Comfort says you are being humble when in truth you are afraid to stand out. Comfort says you are being responsible when in truth you are refusing to take a necessary risk. Comfort always sounds reasonable, but reasonable is rarely transformational. If humanity had always listened to comfort, we would still live in caves. It was discomfort that forced progress, that drove people to discover fire, to cross oceans, to reach for the stars. Discomfort is not your enemy. It is the birthplace of everything extraordinary. You must make fear and comfort your training ground. When fear rises, do not retreat. Step into it and learn. When comfort lulls you, disrupt yourself and move. Growth is violent, it will feel like pain, because it is the demolition of old limits. It is the death of the weaker version of yourself, and death always feels like loss. But it is not loss, it is release. You cannot take the old you into the new future. The version of you that was built on fear and comfort cannot survive in the environment of greatness. That version must be buried daily. Each morning when you wake up, you are faced with 2 choices. Feed fear or feed purpose, nurture comfort or nurture growth. Every time you choose the harder path, you bury the old you a little deeper. Every time you delay, you resurrect him. The war is daily and it is brutal, but it is the only war worth fighting because the prize is your future. Growth does not care about your feelings. Growth responds only to action. You can feel fear and still act. You can feel discomfort and still move. That is what separates the few who build legacies from the many who settle for existence. Comfort has no loyalty to you. It will betray you the moment the world changes, and the world is always changing. Fear has no loyalty to you. It will exaggerate danger, shrink your vision, and rob you of years if you let it. But purpose, discipline, and courage will never betray you. They may demand more of you than you think you can give, but they will also give you more than you thought was possible. That is why you must break the barriers of fear and comfort. The walls you think are holding you back are in fact illusions you created. They dissolve the moment you push against them. Every failure you fear is not a grave, but a stepping stone. Every discomfort you avoid is not punishment, but preparation. The life you want is waiting, but it will never come to the version of you that bows to fear or sleeps in comfort. It will come only to the version of you that dares to walk straight into the fire of fear and chooses to remain uncomfortable until growth is inevitable. That is the cost. That is the duty. And if you do not pay it, your potential will remain locked forever. But if you are willing, if you decide right now to treat fear as a compass and comfort as the enemy, you will find yourself on the only path that matters, the path where who you are today is destroyed to make way for who you were always meant to be. Vision is not a luxury, it is oxygen for the future. Without vision, you drift, and drifting is the slowest form of death. Most people are not defeated by failure, they are defeated by the absence of a compelling purpose. They wake up, go to work, chase distractions, collect paychecks, but they are not alive, they are sleepwalking. Vision is what wakes you at dawn with fire in your chest. Vision is what keeps you moving when fear tells you to quit. And vision is not a dream floating in your mind, it is a blueprint demanding execution. I have seen what happens when people operate without vision. They get lost in comfort, in trivial pursuits, in arguments that mean nothing. They collapse not because they are weak, but because they never had a reason strong enough to endure. But when you carry a vision so powerful it outshines fear, excuses lose their grip. I never built rockets because it was practical. I did it because I could see a future where humanity became a multiplanetary species. That vision burned so deeply in me that every failure, every mockery, every sleepless night became small compared to the future I was chasing. That is the secret of vision. It makes today's pain irrelevant because tomorrow's promise is louder. Purpose transforms obstacles into stepping stones. Without purpose, a closed door looks like rejection. With purpose, it becomes redirection. Without purpose, criticism feels like insult. With purpose, it becomes fuel. Without purpose, fear feels paralyzing. With purpose, it becomes a compass pointing to where you need to grow. Purpose redefines everything. But vision alone is not enough. Too many people have dreams that remain fantasies because they refuse to translate vision into daily action. Vision is the fire, but discipline is the engine. Without discipline, vision burns out. With discipline, vision becomes inevitable. When I decided to push for electric cars, the vision was clear, a sustainable future. But clarity alone did not build Tesla. What built it was the relentless daily discipline of solving thousands of problems, the refusal to accept mediocrity, the willingness to sacrifice comfort for execution. Vision gives you direction, but discipline gives you traction. And traction is the difference between dreaming and building. If you want to build something extraordinary, ask yourself this: is my vision strong enough to make me endure years of pain without applause? Because that is the real test. A weak vision collapses at the first obstacle. A strong vision is unshakable even when the entire world laughs at you. When SpaceX failed 3 launches in a row, people told me to quit. Investors pulled out, experts mocked. But my vision of reaching Mars was bigger than their laughter. Their doubt was noise compared to the roar of that vision. That is what kept me standing when everything else was crumbling. Your vision must be that powerful, so powerful it makes fear irrelevant and failure temporary. The problem is most people confuse wishes with vision. A wish says, I hope it happens. Vision says, it will happen because I will not stop until it does. A wish looks for comfort. Vision looks for challenge. A wish collapses in silence. Vision thrives in silence. Wishes are fragile. Visions are unbreakable. Do not waste your life on wishes. Build a vision so strong that even if you fall forward toward it. Another truth about vision is this: it isolates you. When you carry a vision that others cannot see, you will be misunderstood. People will call you arrogant, unrealistic, even insane. Do not expect validation from those who cannot see what you see. It is not their job to see it. It is your job to build it. Visionaries are always mocked before they are admired. That is the price of seeing the future early. Do not run from that loneliness. Use it. Let it sharpen your focus. Let it force you to rely on your inner compass. The greatest leaders were once labeled fools until time proved them right. If people do not call you crazy at some point, your vision is too small. Vision is also a filter. Once you know where you are going, you must measure every action, every relationship, every decision against that vision. If it does not align, it must go. Vision is ruthless because it demands sacrifice. You cannot carry dead weight to the summit. You cannot drag excuses into the future. You cannot stay loyal to old patterns and expect a new destiny. Vision will demand you shed distractions, betray comfort, even outgrow people. And that is not cruelty, it is alignment. You are not betraying them, you are staying loyal to the future. The stronger your vision, the sharper your decisions become. You stop saying yes to everything. You stop wasting years chasing what does not matter. You build your life like an engineer builds a rocket, every part intentional, every piece designed for liftoff. Ask yourself, do your daily actions match your vision? If not, you are sabotaging yourself. Do not say you want greatness and spend hours in distraction. Do not say you want strength and feed yourself weakness. Do not say you want impact and hide in mediocrity. Vision is not what you talk about, it is what you practice. If you want to see your vision come alive, you must align your habits with it ruthlessly. Wake up earlier, learn daily, refuse excuses, guard your focus like treasure. Build rituals that choke out laziness. Vision without habits is fantasy. Vision with habits is destiny. And here is the paradox. Vision feels impossible in the beginning. If it does not feel impossible, it is too small. Impossible visions are the only ones worth chasing because they demand your full evolution. They force you to become someone new. They burn away your weakness and reveal your strength. That is why I never chase what is easy. Easy is the death of vision. Easy gives you a life that looks good on the outside but feels hollow inside. Hard builds legacies. Hard stretches you into someone unrecognizable. Hard is the proof that you are alive. When you embrace hard, you honor your vision. When you run from hard, you betray it. So ask yourself right now, is your vision strong enough to pull you through years of difficulty? Is your purpose so compelling that you would risk reputation, comfort, even failure for it? If not, then you must go deeper. Find the vision that makes fear irrelevant. Find the vision that makes sacrifice bearable. Find the vision that makes comfort intolerable. That vision is the only one worth living for. Because in the end, what is the point of life without purpose? You can collect money, status, approval, but if you do not serve a vision bigger than yourself, you will still feel empty. Vision is the cure for emptiness. Purpose is the antidote to despair. They are the reasons men and women rise from ashes, rebuild after collapse, keep walking when everything says stop. They are the forces that separate those who merely exist from those who truly live. And here is the final truth. Vision does not wait. It will either be built by you, or it will die with you. And the world does not need another dream buried in the graveyard of fear and comfort. The world needs you to build it. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Discipline is not punishment. It is the highest form of self-respect, because when you choose discipline, you are choosing to honor the future version of yourself over the impulses of the present moment. And this is where most people fail. They want results without process. They want greatness without grind. They want transformation without sacrifice. But the truth is, every extraordinary achievement is built not on motivation, but on the brutal consistency of disciplined action repeated day after day when no one is watching and no one is clapping. And if you cannot master discipline, you cannot master anything, because the foundation of progress is built on your ability to say no to what feels good now, in order to say yes to what will change your life later. And this is the law of greatness. It is not about talent. It is not about luck. It is not about being in the right place at the right time. It is about building a system where your standards are higher than your excuses, where your schedule reflects your priorities, and where your habits are so strong they overpower your feelings, because feelings are inconsistent but discipline is reliable, and reliability is what builds trust within yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you wire your brain to believe you. Every time you break it, you weaken your identity. So the question is not, can you be disciplined once, but can you be disciplined daily? And the answer determines your future, because the man who acts only when he feels like it will never build anything beyond mediocrity. But the man who acts despite feelings builds empires. The difference is not inspiration but discipline. Think about this. Rockets do not launch when they feel ready. They launch when the countdown reaches zero, regardless of weather, regardless of fear, because systems have been built, tests have been done, decisions have been made, and the point of no return has been crossed. Your life must operate the same way. You need systems that override hesitation. You need rituals that eliminate negotiation, because discipline is about removing the option to quit, not debating whether or not you feel like continuing. And this is what people misunderstand. They think discipline is about force, but real discipline is about design. If your environment supports your vision, discipline becomes natural. If your environment contradicts your vision, discipline becomes impossible. This is why you must engineer your surroundings, engineer your time, engineer your circle. Because the system you live in either supports discipline or sabotages it, and you cannot afford sabotage. So ask yourself, what does my environment feed? Does it feed distraction or focus? Does it feed laziness or action? Does it feed excuses or execution? And then cut ruthlessly, because you cannot rise while dragging anchors, you cannot evolve while tolerating mediocrity around you, and you cannot reach greatness if you keep negotiating with weakness. The world will tell you discipline is harsh, but I tell you lack of discipline is harsher, because it keeps you average, it keeps you broke, it keeps you enslaved to impulses, it keeps you living below your potential. Discipline is hard, but regret is unbearable, and regret is always the price of undisciplined living. I have learned this in my own journey. When we were building Tesla and SpaceX simultaneously, there were endless days without sleep, endless crises, endless failures, and the only thing that kept the mission alive was not motivation but discipline. Discipline to show up every day, even when every headline screamed failure. Discipline to push through financial collapse when investors fled. Discipline to continue solving problems when the entire world said it was impossible. And it is that discipline that turned impossible into inevitable, because the universe rewards consistency. It rewards those who refuse to stop, those who execute even when tired, those who persist even when doubted. Discipline is proof that you are serious, proof that you respect the mission, proof that you are willing to pay the price. And greatness will not reveal itself to the man who hopes. It reveals itself to the man who executes. You must engrave this into your mind. Discipline is freedom. It may look like restriction, but it liberates you from chaos. It liberates you from indecision. It liberates you from weakness. Because when you live by discipline, you are no longer a prisoner of impulses. You are the commander of your life. And command is the only way to build anything meaningful. But let us go deeper. Discipline is not just about doing the work. It is about doing the work well, with precision, with excellence. Because sloppy effort is wasted effort. Discipline demands that you do not simply show up, but that you show up with full focus, that you extract value from every second, that you treat every repetition as data, every attempt as training, every failure as feedback. This mindset turns discipline from drudgery into design, into mastery, because mastery is nothing more than disciplined action over time, stacked endlessly until it transforms into greatness. The world loves to celebrate genius, but genius is just discipline disguised as brilliance. And when you understand that, you stop waiting for talent and start building habits. Because habits are stronger than motivation, stronger than excuses, stronger than fear. And the man with the right habits becomes unstoppable. So what habits will you design? Will you dominate your mornings or hit the snooze button? Will you feed your mind with knowledge or with noise? Will you push your body through training or let it decay? Will you organize your days around priorities or around distractions? Every choice is a brick, and brick by brick you are either building a fortress of greatness or a prison of mediocrity, and the difference is discipline. I tell you this without exaggeration. The future belongs to the disciplined. It belongs to those who can do what needs to be done long after the mood has left. Because moods change, but missions remain. The question is, are you mission-driven or mood-driven? Because only one builds legacies. So stop asking for hacks, stop waiting for motivation, stop looking for shortcuts, and start building systems. Start engineering habits. Start living by discipline so unshakable that success becomes not a surprise but a mathematical certainty. Because that is what discipline does. It makes results inevitable. It turns dreams into deadlines. It transforms men into leaders, and it carves legacies from the ordinary. And that is what you are called to do, not someday, but today, not when you feel like it, but when it is demanded. Because every day is demanded, every day is the test, and only the disciplined pass it. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is the raw material that builds it. Yet most people are so terrified of failure that they never give themselves the chance to learn, to grow, to evolve. They confuse failing with being a failure. but these are not the same. Failing is an event, being a failure is a decision. And the truth is, every great achievement in history has been built on the ashes of failed attempts. The difference between those who make history and those who vanish in mediocrity is not the absence of failure, but the refusal to stop after it. I have seen rockets explode into fireballs on the launch pad, watched millions of dollars vanish in seconds, and yet those very failures were the reason we eventually succeeded, because each failure was data, each setback was feedback, each collapse was a lesson carved in reality. And I tell you now, if you are not failing, you are not pushing hard enough, you are not daring enough, you are not aiming at anything that truly matters, because safety is a slow death, and failure is the tuition you pay for greatness. You cannot bypass it, you cannot avoid it, you cannot pray it away. It is the forge that tests you, the fire that refines you, the teacher that no school will ever provide. So instead of running from failure, learn to pursue it, embrace it, demand it, because every time you fail, you collect new data, and data is the most valuable asset on the journey to mastery. Think about it this way. When we built rockets at SpaceX, the early launches were disasters. Engines failed, structures collapsed, trajectories deviated, but every explosion told us something. Every failure taught us where the weakness was. Every setback narrowed the margin of error until success became inevitable. The failures that the world mocked were in truth the stepping stones they would later celebrate, and this is true in your life. Every failure you endure is not a punishment, it is an instruction, but most will not read the instructions. They will give up. They will interpret failure as rejection instead of correction, and that is why they remain stuck. But you must learn to see failure differently, to treat it as essential data in the laboratory of life, to analyze it without emotion, to dissect it for insight, to extract the lesson and then move forward with renewed precision, because the only real failure is the failure to learn. Everything else is a test, everything else is practice, everything else is training. So stop calling yourself broken because you failed. Stop believing that one closed door defines your future. Stop acting like a setback is a sentence. It is not. It is simply the proof that you are on the edge of growth, that you are doing something real, that you are in the arena where outcomes are uncertain, because nothing worth having is ever certain. The risk is what makes it valuable. The uncertainty is what makes it meaningful. So I want you to reframe failure completely. See it as fuel, see it as feedback, see it as the hard evidence that you are alive, that you are in motion, that you are not stagnating. Because stagnation is worse than failure. Failure at least moves you forward. Stagnation rots you from within. Think of failure as the map. Every time you fall, you eliminate one wrong path. Every time you lose, you discover one hidden weakness. Every time you break, you expose the cracks that must be reinforced. And if you continue long enough with this mindset, you will realize that failure is not the enemy. Failure is the engineer, the one that designs you into something stronger, more resilient, more precise, and eventually unstoppable. But here is the key. You cannot just fail mindlessly. You must fail forward. Fail with awareness. Fail with analysis. Fail with intention. Because failure without reflection is wasted. But failure studied, examined, dissected becomes the most powerful teacher, and it builds a foundation that success alone could never provide. Because success teaches you nothing, it only comforts your ego, but failure strips ego away and forces you to confront truth. And truth is the fuel of growth. I know people who spend their entire lives avoiding failure. They choose safe jobs, safe routines, safe dreams. They never risk embarrassment. They never risk rejection, and they never risk losing. But in truth, they are losing constantly. Losing time, losing potential, losing the chance to become the person they were created to be. And when life ends, they realize too late that their fear of failure was the greatest failure of all. So I tell you now, you must reverse this fear. You must crave the lessons that only failure can teach. You must see every attempt as an experiment, every outcome as data, every collapse as calibration, because this is how greatness is engineered. This is how you build systems that cannot be broken, and this is how you become someone who cannot be stopped, because no amount of failure destroys the man who refuses to quit. Every failed launch only brings him closer to orbit. Every failed attempt only brings him closer to mastery. And every closed door only directs him toward the right one. This is how progress works. By iteration, by trial, by error, by learning, by refining, and eventually by succeeding. But only those who endure the error earn the success, and most will never endure it. Most will quit when the first rocket explodes, when the first business collapses, When the first dream is mocked, but not you, because you know failure is not the end, it is the middle, it is not the verdict, it is the process. And if you trust that process, if you embrace that pain, if you use that data, then failure will not bury you, it will build you. And one day, the very things that once embarrassed you, once broke you, once humiliated you, will be the stories you tell as proof of your resilience, as evidence of your journey, as the foundation of your greatness. And the world will admire you for what they once mocked you for, and they will call you lucky, they will call you genius, but you will know the truth. You will know that what they called genius was simply your willingness to fail more times than they dared to try. And that is why you must never fear failure. You must fear only the comfort that keeps you from it, because failure is not your enemy. It is your engineer, your ally, your most brutal but most honest teacher. And if you embrace it, it will carry you higher than you ever thought possible. Vision without risk is hallucination, and risk without vision is recklessness. But when you combine a clear vision with the willingness to take bold risks, you create the foundation of every breakthrough in human history. The truth is that most people never risk enough because their vision is too small. They settle for dreams that fit inside the comfort zone of their current reality. They settle for goals that do not require sacrifice, that do not demand transformation, that do not expose them to ridicule. But if your dream does not scare you, it is not big enough, because real vision is supposed to be terrifying. It is supposed to make you doubt. It is supposed to make others call you crazy. Because if it does not, then you are simply rearranging what already exists, instead of creating what never existed before. When I spoke about sending humans to Mars, people laughed. They called it fantasy. They said it was impossible. But impossibility is only a word for things not yet attempted. And I knew that the only way to change humanity's trajectory was to commit to a vision so massive it would either transform everything or destroy me in the attempt. And that is what bold vision requires. It requires the courage to risk your reputation, your comfort, your resources, even your sense of safety, because safety is the slowest death a human being can choose. Every great leap in history came from someone willing to gamble everything for something larger than themselves. The Wright brothers risking their lives to fly, Edison risking endless failure to bring light, Jobs risking irrelevance to reimagine technology. None of them were guaranteed success, but their vision demanded risk, and their risk created the future. So, if you want to create something meaningful, you must stop asking, how do I avoid risk? And instead, ask what vision is worth risking everything for. Because the truth is, you are always at risk. Life itself is risk. Every day you step outside, you risk failure, rejection, humiliation. So the real question is not whether you will risk, but whether the risks you take are worthy of the life you want to live. Mediocrity costs as much as greatness. It just pays you nothing in return. And that is why you must be bold enough to aim higher, to choose visions so big they scare you, and then to pursue them with a discipline so ruthless it terrifies those who watch you. You must understand that risk is not a side effect of greatness. It is the gateway. There is no progress without uncertainty. There is no innovation without potential collapse. There is no reward without exposure to loss. And yet most people spend their lives trying to insulate themselves from risk. They choose stable jobs, predictable paths, comfortable routines, but what they call stability is just stagnation. What they call security is just a cage, and cages do not protect you. They bury you slowly. If you want freedom, you must embrace risk. If you want greatness, you must marry risk to vision. You must understand that the reason bold vision matters is because it forces you to evolve. When you decide to chase something that feels impossible, you cannot remain the same person. You are forced to outgrow your excuses, to outlearn your ignorance, to outwork your limitations, and in the process you discover that risk was not destroying you, it was sculpting you, shaping you into someone capable of carrying the vision you declared. Think of risk as resistance training, the weight that builds the muscle of resilience. Every risk you take, whether it succeeds or fails, strengthens you, and that strength accumulates until one day you realize that what once felt terrifying now feels natural. That is the power of compounding risk. It transforms the impossible into the inevitable, but you must be willing to pay the price, because the price of bold vision is not measured only in money. It is measured in sleepless nights, in relentless criticism, in doors slammed in your face, in the endless cycle of failure and refinement. But if you endure that price, the reward is a life that matters, a legacy that endures, a future that would not exist without you. So I want you to stop thinking of risk as danger and start thinking of it as currency. You cannot buy a future with safety. You buy it with risk. And the bigger the vision, the higher the price. If you want small rewards, take small risks. If you want massive impact, take massive risks. It is that simple. You cannot bypass it. You cannot cheat it. You cannot trick the universe into giving you greatness without exposure. The risk is the toll, the vision is the map, and your commitment is the vehicle. But you must be willing to drive even when the road is uncertain, because the road will never be certain. Certainty is the enemy of creation. If you wait until everything is clear, you will wait forever. Bold decisions are made in the fog, not in the light. They are made when you trust the vision more than the evidence, when you trust your conviction more than the critics, when you trust the process more than the outcome. And that is what separates those who dream from those who do. Many will talk about vision, few will risk for it. Many will imagine new worlds, few will dare to build them. And the reason is that risk is uncomfortable. It strips away excuses. It exposes weakness. It makes you vulnerable. But vulnerability is the birthplace of transformation. When you risk, you step into a state where you can no longer hide. And in that exposure, you grow faster than you ever thought possible. Risk forces you to commit. And commitment is the soil in which vision grows roots. Without risk, your vision dies in theory. But with risk, it becomes alive in practice. So I tell you, stop waiting for guarantees. Stop waiting for applause. Stop waiting for safety. Nothing worth doing comes with those conditions. The only guarantee is that you will be tested. The only applause that matters is the one you give yourself for showing up. And the only safety is in knowing that you lived fully, that you pursued what mattered, that you risked enough to make your life unforgettable. Do not be reckless, but do be relentless. Do not chase risk for its own sake, but do not fear it when it comes in service of vision, because vision without risk is daydreaming, and risk without vision is destruction. But when the two align, they form destiny. So declare your vision, embrace the risk, make the bold decision, and let the world adjust to your courage, because it always does. The critics vanish, the doubters fade. The same people who mocked you will one day quote you, and the future will be grateful that you were bold enough to risk what they never dared. Discipline is not glamorous, it is not exciting, it is not something you celebrate on a stage with lights and applause. Discipline is invisible, boring, repetitive, and that is why most people never master it. They chase motivation, they chase feelings, they chase external inspiration, but motivation is a spark, and sparks die quickly if there is no consistent fuel. Discipline is the fuel. Discipline is the engine. Discipline is the daily choice to do what must be done regardless of whether you feel like it or not. And that is why discipline is the foundation of every great achievement. When I built companies that people said would fail, I was not motivated every day. In fact, most days I felt exhausted. I felt crushed. I felt overwhelmed. But discipline made me show up anyway. Discipline said launch again, even after 3 rockets exploded. Discipline said keep building cars, even when critics laughed. Discipline said keep going even when money ran out. That is the truth about discipline. It does not listen to your feelings. It listens only to your decisions. You must understand that your potential is trapped inside a cage built by your habits, and only discipline has the key to unlock it. You cannot think your way into greatness. You cannot hope your way into transformation. You must act. And action repeated daily becomes habit, and habit hardened by consistency becomes character, and character is destiny. Everything you want is on the other side of habits you have not built yet, and those habits will not build themselves. They will not appear out of thin air. You must create them brick by brick, repetition by repetition, until they are so ingrained that not doing them feels unnatural. That is when you know discipline has taken root. People think discipline is about restriction, about losing freedom, but the opposite is true. Discipline is the ultimate freedom, because without it you are a slave to impulse, a slave to moods, a slave to distraction. With discipline you take back control. You reclaim your time, your focus, your energy. You no longer drift with the current. You set your own course. And this is the difference between those who talk and those who build, between those who dream and those who execute. Execution is built on discipline. Discipline is built on habit. Habit is built on small, consistent actions. So do not wait for big moments. Greatness hides in the small, in the daily, in the ordinary. Greatness is hidden in waking up when you said you would, in doing the work without applause, in finishing what you started, in keeping promises to yourself, even when no one is watching. That is the training ground. That is where strength is forged. And if you cannot be trusted with the small, you will never handle the big. Stop chasing inspiration and start chasing consistency, because consistency beats intensity. Anyone can go hard for a day, Anyone can feel inspired for a week, but very few can stay committed for years, and that is what separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. Discipline is not about perfection, it is about persistence. It is not about never failing, it is about never quitting. You will fall, you will miss days, you will make mistakes, but discipline pulls you back. It says, begin again. It says, do not stop. It says the mission is greater than the mood, and if you can master that, you will become unstoppable. I want you to think of your life as a system, not a series of random events. In a rocket, every system must be tested, calibrated, refined, because if one small component fails, the entire launch collapses. Your life works the same way. Your habits are the systems, your discipline is the calibration, and if you ignore them, the launch fails. You cannot blame luck. You cannot blame circumstance. It is always about preparation, about execution, about whether you did the work, and that is why discipline is not optional. It is the foundation. Without it, nothing else works. People ask me how I manage to run multiple companies, how I handle so many responsibilities, and the answer is not intelligence. The answer is not even vision. The answer is discipline. A ruthless commitment to structure, to habits, to execution. Time is limited, energy is limited. So discipline is how you multiply both, by eliminating waste, by cutting distractions, by creating routines that make progress automatic. Discipline removes the need to negotiate with yourself every day. Should I work out? Should I focus? Should I act? The answer is always yes, because the decision was already made. Discipline frees you from the endless debate in your mind. It turns action into default, and when action becomes default, success becomes inevitable. Because most people fail not because they lack talent, but because they lack consistency. They stop when it gets hard. They stop when it gets boring. They stop when no one notices. But those who persist, who stay the course, who act daily regardless of feeling, they eventually break through. Because the compound effect of discipline is unstoppable. Small actions stacked daily turn into massive results, like drops of water carving stone, like relentless launches leading to breakthroughs. That is the secret. There is no secret, only discipline. People often admire results, but they rarely admire the discipline behind them because it is hidden, it is not glamorous. But if you study anyone great, you will find the same truth. They built themselves on discipline. So I challenge you, stop waiting for the right mood, stop waiting for the right time, stop waiting for motivation. Decide now that discipline will be your standard. Design habits that serve your future. Protect them with everything you have, and execute them daily until they become who you are. Because in the end, success is not about what you do occasionally, it is about what you do consistently. It is not about intensity, it is about identity. And if you make discipline your identity, there is nothing you cannot build, nothing you cannot endure, nothing you cannot achieve. Discipline is the foundation of freedom, the engine of greatness, and the proof that you are serious about your vision. So build it, live it, and never let it go.